But you know, my husband and I are known across the United States of America for the conversations we have. We once ended up separated for a whole year, and we were put into extreme coaching on how to communicate. And it's this give and take, and well, I heard you say, and well, you said, until we finally understand what each other said. And it doesn't matter where we are or who we're with when we get a little crossways, because we settle it right then and there. Well, we had this one ongoing problem, and you got to know I am telling you this story with his blessing, okay? He says it's awkward, but I can tell it because it's a true story, and it has to do with this who's right thing. He would go out in the front yard instead of to the restroom. Only thing is, we lived in a real neighborhood, and there was a street light on. We lived in a corner house, and there was a street light. And this just horrified me, because this was not something my dad had ever done. I just didn't know it happened, and I was just insane for him to please not do that. Well, 11 years pass, and this happens now and then, but he gets sober, and it still happens, and I'm baffled. We end up separated, and before we get back together, I explained to him, honey, I love you, but there's something you need to do for me just because it upsets me so much. If you respect me, and you want to honor me, I need you not to go in the front yard, because we live in a neighborhood. We had moved, but our house was, you know how streets tee? Our house was the house they teed into, and yes, it had a street light right there in the front yard. So anyway, I don't know, we'd been back together a couple of months, and he had a book deadline, and I had a book deadline. It was 2 a.m., and I heard the front door open, and I thought, that stinker. And I ran around there, and I saw him standing out in the yard, kind of like this, you know. He came in, I said, you told me you wouldn't do that anymore. He said, I couldn't make it. I couldn't make it to the bathroom. Well, this had been going on too many years, and I needed somebody to help me get to the end of it. I went back in, and I crafted the most beautiful Dear Abby letter that you have ever read. Now, you got to understand, I have been editing my father's syndicated newspaper column for years. And at first it was a 2,000-word column that came out 5 days a week. Then it was a 700-word column that came out 5 days a week. Then we took it down to 300 words twice a week. I mean, it just changed. So I knew they had a certain amount of space. So I got online and I looked at Dear Abby. I counted the words. I saw what the typical size was. I looked at the format. You got to incite some kind of upset feeling. You've got to have a cause, and you've got to enlist help. So there's no other way to do this but to read it to you. August 13th, 1998. This was about 2:30 a.m. Dear Abby, my husband of many years urinates in the front yard of our home. He usually does this after dark, but on occasion moved to the side yard to urinate during daylight hours. When we were first married, I thought it was because he was drunk, but he has been sober for more than a decade now. I have told him I believe his behavior to be a form of perversion, illegal and disgusting. I had to get him riled up. Years ago, he promised to stop since it upset me so much, but when I interrupted his front yard ritual a few moments ago, he said he forgot how strongly I felt about it. Promised again not to do it anymore and reassured me that all men do it and he doesn't think it is wrong at all. Abby, we live in a nice neighborhood. My husband has a degree, is a successful businessman, and is over 50. I am so afraid my neighbors have seen him, I can't even think about it. Will you ask your readers if they think this is a normal male ritual to urinate outside their home? P.S. I have seen him do it even when the toilet was closer. Well...
And you bring the paper?
These are just a few. See, my father may have a bestseller, see you at the top, that sold almost 2 million copies, but I have something he doesn't have. I have the second most responded to Dear Abby letter ever. Now, I was so ashamed of his behavior, I didn't tell Mom and Dad about that I had made Dear Abby for years, and when I did, they actually thought it was funny, but Charlton Heston was one of the last actors my mother had a big crush on, and he wrote his first letter to Dear Abby in response to my letter. Yes, he did. He did, and he said that it is normal. And after that they all do it. One person wrote in and suggested that it's probably just like men, who like to mark their territory. They're like animals, and you should expect that. And then another lady wrote, and she said, well, if that is marking, then my husband owns San Francisco, Seattle. Anyway, it ended up being a hilarious bunch of articles. But I'm telling you about this because it has to do with embracing the struggle. I had done enough of struggling with that particular topic. And I'm sure you're anxious to know how the scales played out, because in the end she did say that it was the second most responded to letter and that it was overwhelmingly in favor of my husband.
Really?